Good day, everyone, and welcome to Philosophy and Psychosocial Foundation of Education class under Professor Rosita D. Bagsit. Today, I will be reporting on methods in eradicating undesirable emotional behavior. How we interpret and respond to the world around us makes up who we are and contributes to our quality of life. Defining emotions. According to the American Psychological Association or APA, emotion is defined as complex reaction pattern involving experiential, behavioral, and physiological elements. Emotions are how individuals deal with matters or situations they find personally significant. Emotional experiences have three components. The first component is subjective experience. Subjective experiences can range from something as simple as seeing a color to something as major as losing a loved one or getting married. No matter how intense the experience is, it can provoke many emotions in a single individual, and the emotions each individual feel may be different. For example, one person may feel anger and regret at the loss of a loved one, while another may experience intense sadness. The second component is physiological experience. This physiological response is the result of the autonomic nervous system's reaction to the emotion we're experiencing. The autonomic nervous system controls our involuntary bodily responses and regardless our fight or flight response. According to many psychologists, our physiological responses are likely how emotion helped us evolve and survive as humans throughout history. Facial expressions play an important role in responding accordingly to an emotion in a physical sense. The third component is the behavioral or expressive response. The behavioral response aspect of the emotional response is the actual expression of the emotion. Behavioral responses can include a smile, a grimace, a laugh, or a sigh, along with many other reactions depending on societal norms and personality. Feelings. Feelings arise from an emotional experience. Because a person is conscious of the experience, this is classified in the same category as anger or pain. A feeling is the result of an emotion and may be influenced by memories, beliefs, and other factors. Mood. A mood is described by the APA as any short-lived emotional state, usually of low intensity. Moods differ from emotions because they lack stimuli and have no clear starting point. For example, insults can trigger the emotion of anger, while an angry mood may arise without apparent cause. In emotional psychology, emotions are split into two groups, basic and complex. Basic emotions are associated with recognizable facial expressions and tend to happen automatically. Charles Darwin was the first to suggest that emotion-induced facial expressions are universal. This suggestion was a centerpiece idea to his theory of evolution, implying that emotions and their expressions were biological and adaptive. Emotional psychologist Paul Ekman identified six basic emotions that could be interpreted through facial expressions. They included happiness, sadness, fear, disgust, anger, and surprise. He expanded the list in 1990 to also embarrassment, excitement, contempt, shame, pride, satisfaction, and amusement, though those additions have not been widely adopted. Similarly, in 1980s, psychologist Robert Plutchik identified 8 basic emotions which grouped into pairs of opposites, including joy and sadness, anger and fear, trust and disgust, and surprise and anticipation. This classification is known as a wheel of emotions and can be compared to a color wheel, in that certain emotions mixed together can create now complex emotions. Complex emotions have differing appearances and may not be easily recognizable, such as grief, jealousy, or regret. Plutchik paired the basic emotions with their polar opposites to help further develop his theory. So, sadness is the opposite of joy, anticipation is the opposite of surprise, anger is the opposite of fear, and disgust is the opposite of trust. Plutchik's wheel is a strong visual representation of how our emotions present themselves. Plutchik also used color to represent the intensity of emotions. The darker the color, the more intense it is. It's a fantastic starting resource for helping us further develop our understanding of how our emotions present themselves, how they fluctuate, and how they can interact with each other. Complex emotions are defined as any emotion that is an aggregate of two or more others. The APA uses the example of hate being a fusion of fear, anger, and disgust. Basic emotions, on the other hand, are unmixed and innate. Other complex emotions include love, embarrassment, envy, gratitude, guilt, pride, and worry, among many others. Here are some theories of emotion: James Lange theory, facial feedback theory, Cannon-Bard theory, Schachter-Singer theory, cognitive appraisal theory. Ekman argues that emotions are fundamentally constructive. They are influenced by what is good for species overall and what we learn during our upbringing. They guide our behavior in a way that should lead us to positive outcome. However, emotions can become destructive if emotions we've learned are correct response no longer fit our situation, or if subconscious emotions cause reactions that we are unable to understand. Negative emotions. Negative emotion provide us with the strongest indication that something is not right or our safety might be compromised. Negative emotions are completely normal. Without them, we wouldn't be able to appreciate positive ones. Here are the 8 examples of negative emotions: anger, annoyance, fear, anxiety, sadness, guilt, apathy, despair. On any given day, you probably experience a range of emotions: excitement, unease, frustration, joy, disappointment. These often relate to specific events. Your responses to these events can vary based on your frame of mind and circumstances surrounding the situation. Here's how to identify emotional triggers. An emotional trigger is anything including memories, experiences, or events that sparks an intense emotional reaction regardless of your current mood. Emotional triggers are associated with post-traumatic stress disorder. Knowing what your emotional triggers are and how to deal with them is a key component of good emotional health. Here are the common situations that trigger intense emotions. Include rejection, betrayal, unjust treatment, challenged beliefs, helplessness or loss of control, being excluded or ignored, disapproval of criticism, feeling unwanted or unneeded, insecurity, feeling smothered or too needed. How negative emotions affect us. Anger, frustration, fear, and other negative emotions are all part of the human experience. They can all lead to stress and are often seen as emotions to be avoided, ignored, or otherwise disavowed. But they can actually be healthy to experience. A better approach is to manage them without denying them, and there are several reasons for this. Managing negative emotions. The idea of managing negative emotions is complex one. It doesn't mean avoiding them. Avoidance coping is actually a form of coping that attempts to do this, and it can often backfire. It doesn't also mean letting these negative emotions wreak havoc on your life, your relationships, and your stress levels. And manage anger, for example, can compel us to destroy relationships if we allow it to. Managing negative emotions is more about embracing the fact that we are feeling this way and allowing ourselves to receive the messages that they are sending us before we release them and move forward. Managing negative emotions also means not allowing them to overrun us. We can keep them under control without denying that we are feeling them. There are several strategies that have been explored and recommended as a means of accepting and processing negative emotions, as well as emerging techniques that have been developed with this research in mind. Experts have learned more about how our negative emotions affect us and what to do with them, and how we can remain emotionally healthy throughout the process. Here are the techniques in managing negative emotions outlined by series teams have acronym Tears of Hope. Tears. T stands for Teach and Learn. This means to embrace self-awareness and increase personal knowledge of your body and mind, and how they are responding to stress and other emotional states. This allows you to understand when you are upset and why, and be better able to interpret the signals your body is sending. E. Express and enable sensory and embodied experiences. This one sounds a little more complicated, but simply involves encouraging openness and curiosity within yourself to increase your acceptance of what comes. A. Accept and befriend. It can be highly beneficial to actively focus on increasing your own self-compassion, and tolerance for frustration. R. Reappraise and reframe. You can use cognitive behavioral approaches to see things differently. Social support for S. This can involve practice of loving kindness, meditation, which can expand your feelings of connection to others and your self-compassion while you invest in relationships. Hope. H stands for hedonic well-being and happiness. Research shows that it can be highly beneficial to have a 3-to-1 ratio of positive versus negative emotions, meaning that you add positive experiences to your life, focus on happy memories, and savor successes. For example, to increase the amount of time you spend authentically feeling good. O. Observe and attend to. Try to practice mindfulness and non-judgmental attend to things in life. P. Physiology and behavior. Focus on relaxation, breathing exercises, and self-care. E. For eudaimonia. Strive for goals in life and sense of authenticity. So, if we're going to relate this in a teaching and learning process, we all know that the classroom brings together all sorts of students, both well and badly behaved. So those students who badly behave need special attention to usher them back on the path to good behavior. So most of the teachers are having tough time with certain students that are misbehaving in class. So here are some strategies to eradicate or manage or handle some misbehaviors of students. So first, to strengthen a good behavior, use positive feedbacks. For example, when your children behave, reward them by thanking them. When you see your children sharing, tell them that they should be proud of themselves. To reduce also misbehavior, use positive feedback to strengthen the opposite behavior. Example, if you want to reduce the amount of arguing between two children, call attention to the time when they are not arguing. If your children have negative attitude, reward anything positive. And to handle bad student behavior, first strategy, bring difficult students close to you. In a classroom setting, you'll often find that the noisemakers and stubborn students tend to sit at the back of the class, which offers anonymity and gives confidence to misbehave. So sitting such students at the opposite end of the room, somewhere close to the teacher's desk, makes them easily stand out and deter such actions. Second, talk to them in private. So calling out students in front of the class rarely proves helpful. It can breed resentment and further indiscipline. Also, do not blame or reduce students in front of their friends. Rather, ask him or her to see after the lesson, when you can look to find out the underlying reasons behind the misbehavior. Earlier, I discussed about what triggers emotional behavior. So, you need to find out what are the reasons behind for this bad behavior. So acting up can be indicative of family problems back home, For example, the child's parent may have separated, meaning he or she is dealing with the challenge of co-parenting arrangements or being separated from a parent. A conflict can arise because issues to do with contact time and child support. Children also misbehave out of perceived need to impress peers. So you could tackle that with a real-life example of how acting out in class is not the best solution. Rather, talking it out at the appropriate time is. While you're at it, be sure to explain why what they did is wrong and the negative consequences of such actions. Next, be the role model of the behavior you want. Enforcing rules in a classroom is hard if you don't follow them yourself. Besides, having clear policies or rules in place, you should be the first to practice what you preach. Otherwise, students will be inclined to follow your examples instead of your words. If you reprimand students for lateness, for example, be early every day. Next, number 4, define right from wrong. At times, especially when dealing with young children, students might not know what constitutes unacceptable class behavior. So they might know that playing this game in class is wrong or reading this book in the middle of the lesson is not allowed. So help make the line between right and wrong clear to them. Next, focus more on rewards than punishments. Avoid punishment or avoiding punishment is an effective strategy to ensure everyone is on their best behavior, but rewards are a more productive approach over the long run. Dangling the lure of incentives to students often gives them that push to not only steer clear of rule infringements, but put their best foot forward. So rewards could be anything from giving candy or a stuffed toy or simple compliments to acknowledge their efforts. You can also make classroom activities so engaging that students don't want to disrupt what is happening in the classroom. Next, adapt the peer tutor technique. So sometimes, no matter how friendly and accommodating you may try to be, sometimes a misbehaving student needs the shoulder of a peer to lean on. So that person could be someone going through the same life experiences or simply a non-authoritative figure. So using the peer tutor technique, you may pair the well-behaved student with one not so well-behaved. So while they are working on polishing their academics, the learner can also be getting a lesson on proper personal skills. It's prudent you talk to mentoring student and explain to him or her what you aim to accomplish and what he or she can do to help. Next, try to understand. Sometimes, a student may be construed to be rude when they are actually abiding by a cultural practice or tradition. In some cultures, no, for example, it is prohibited to look adults in the eye. So when you're telling a student to do so and is looking away or down at the ground, it might have something to do with that. So before you straight away label any action as bad behavior, first get to the root of the matter. For all they know, you may be asking them to do something contrary to what they believe is right or improper. Last but certainly not the least, never give up on seemingly stubborn student who looks determined to work your every nerve.
Don't let up on the good fight until it is won. Sometimes that takes minutes, other times it takes weeks. Just be patient and never let your frustrations get the better of you.
Always remember, one of the best ways to deal with our negative emotions is through acceptance. Accepting negative emotions in ourselves and others are all part of being human, allows us to build better compassion for how they might present themselves and why, rather than becoming stuck in a mindset that negative emotions need to be avoided or that they are somehow wrong to experience. We need to accept they are a natural part of who we are. And that ends my report. Thank you for listening and learning with me. Again, good day, everyone.